9 against the 9.
9 against the 9.
9 against the
9
9.
against the 9.
9 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 against the 9.
A podcast about Lord of the Rings.
All right.
Is this our intro? Should we
Yeah,
be like,
we're in.
welcome or
We're on
whatever?
it.
You can't do that. You got to let me know when we're starting.
We're starting now. Welcome to 9 against the 9. We are it. So the attentive listener will. I don't know what the attentive listener will do.
They'll pay attention is what they'll do.
We're in a brand new location, and we don't intend to be here ever again, but we might be. And it has been a while since our last time we recorded a podcast was October of 2022. Is that correct? I'm sure it is.
Yep. It is February of 2023.
Yep. But we posted the Evil episode in February, which is now. And we're on episode 5 of 9 Against the 9, and it's the Obligatory Orc episode.
Obligatory?
I feel like we have to hit orcs, obviously, right? We don't have to hit everything. Like, we talked about hitting men, and I think we're not gonna.
Orc obligatory? Orc obligatory?
That's how I'm going to title it.
Oy.
The Orc Obligatory
Sorry, not
episode.
sorry.
I want to start off with some corrections. You want to go first this time? I know you got
No.
one. Oh, you're looking for it right now, right?
I'm looking for it.
Yeah, word. Should I give you some music? You know what I mean?
Do whatever. Follow your heart or whatever.
All right. All right.
All right, so last episode I mentioned a TED Talk about how Native American practices that heal the land or work with the land. Maybe this came out of like talking about COVID and like everyone went inside and then the land was all clear and like look how clean the air is. So I didn't have the name at that point, but it's a TED Talk. The woman's name is Lila June. The title of the TED Talk is 3,000-Year-Old Solutions to Modern Problems. So I just want to say that's the TED Talk. That's the person. That's where I got that information in case you wanted to look it up or follow up with that. It's probably on TED.com. It's also on YouTube.
Word. I have the following corrections or clarifications, just things I want to mention. At some point, I was looking through the books, looking for orcs, and I ran into Gollum, as one does. And there's a moment when he's talking to Frodo and Sam, and I think he's saying you can't give the ring to him. He says he's going to eat us all. He'll eat us all if he gets the ring.
Gollum says that.
Yeah, about Sauron, and that's cool, I think. I think that's a good demonstration of how Sauron is viewed by someone who's been real close to him. And I want to mention Sauron is a rock god. And I don't think we
Like
talk,
Jack Black
Sure. Yeah, beyond, I
or
think.
Jack White.
Any of those Jacks will work.
Any of the Jacks.
Yeah,
You mean rock like rock and roll or
I
like
mean rock and roll.
not
And
like marble or schist?
what I'm trying to get at is like what we didn't acknowledge in the Evil episode is he's the titular villain of the book. The book is named after Sauron, right? That's his title.
He is the Lord.
Yeah, man. In a sense, he's the protagonist of the novel.
He's the Lord. He's the Dark Lord.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think it's striking that I never really thought about how it's not like Frodo's the Lord of the Rings or whatever.
No, he's the bearer.
Yeah, sure, but
He
it's not
bears
called,
it.
Yeah, if it was called the Ring Bearer, that might make more like it might be more sensible, but it's not. It's
Who's gonna
called
buy that book?
Exactly right. So Sauron, I just want to give props to Sauron. He's a great villain, and also we're defining evil.
Interesting how much he's a great villain when he's hardly featured.
Yeah,
He's
I just
not
think that's
there.
really interesting. He's pervasive.
So that's how much of a great villain he is. He isn't even there.
Yeah, because we're like, oh, maybe we get an insight into his perspective once in the book. We couldn't find anything. He kind of talks to
Pippin.
Yeah, we've been through this. Regarding the evil episode, we're like defining evil, and the first one of the first things I said about evil is that there's an element of discord, and I guess I want to clarify like my personal socio-political or aesthetic position on discord. I think discord rules, and I don't want to imply that discord is inherently evil. Because disruption is a vital political and artistic tool to break up hegemony and boredom and the orthodoxy like, I don't know. Not only do I think Discord is good and important, but I'm willing to see Sauron as, like, as I've done before. I'm willing to see him even as a sort of a kind of hero or whatever, against some sort of supremacy model. I think Discord's great.
So when you say Discord rules, this is a clarifying question. You mean like it rules, like it rocks, like, yeah, go Discord, not like Discord is in charge and has power.
No, but I do think
Like it is the rule of law.
it's not what I meant,
Like,
but
yeah, it rules, man. Let's go.
that's the exact attitude. Yeah, it's tubular. That's what I meant. But
Gnarly.
but I also, I mean, not to go down a crazy wormhole or whatever, but maybe Discord does rule. Maybe entropy is the essential feature. Chaos reigns, as it were.
So there's this idea that I got from Trevor Noah when he was talking with Tommy Lahren on The Daily Show, that he invited her on the show. They have two opposing views to have this discussion, maybe a discordant discussion, discordant views, and it allows for the sharpening of the argument. So that's what I saw, and he's like, it sharpens your argument.
Saturn is my grindstone.
Put that on a T-shirt.
You want to talk about orcs?
That's why we're here, right?
Yeah. All right. So as usual, I have notes.
Shoot.
I want to get at this notion of orcs, like as a minority comparison. I want to dispel that and talk about them as fictional, like a fictional race.
Right. We're not doing
We're not
comparisons to real life. Orcs are orcs. Dwarves are dwarves.
We'll get to that. I'm just going to give you the headings real quick, and then we'll figure out what order. I think we should talk about what and who are orcs. There's a particular situation with orc size that I want to get at. That's part of that. Orcish war and folkcraft. That's a part of who and what are orcs, I think.
We'll bring in like siege warfare in there. Siege versus non-siege warfare.
You can. I don't have any notes on that, but yeah, that's a thing.
I got a little like.
They got a name for that thing. That siege. You know what I mean? They have
Grum?
it's
The
a battering
battering
ram, right?
But also like Helm's Deep.
Word. Okay. Orc origins. Got to hit that up, and we will stray into some Silmarillion territory. Orcs don't love each other. Maybe question mark. I put a question mark there. Orcs, the essential other, especially cannibalistic. Orcs as the essential mindless, bumbling, volitionless minion. Their relationship with Sauron and orcish politics. And then like orc, different kinds of orcs, different breeds of orcs.
Yep. Trackers. Urkai.
Word. Does that order sound good?
Do you have something in there? Like we're going to talk about comparison of orcs and like a hive mind.
Yeah,
like
we can get. I think we should get into that.
This feels like it could go into one of those things that you have in there.
I do. Yeah, let's hit it. There's at least one description that seems ant-like.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get into it. All right. So in terms of orcs as, like I think people think they're clever when they say that orcs are like that they represent a human minority population in the U.S. That's being discriminated against. That's obviously something that happens in the U.S. And while I think orcs are mistreated in the Tolkien Middle Earth universe to a certain extent, they're not like parallel to humans the way that different so-called races of humans are parallel to each other. They don't share like a genetic similarity. But I wanted to share this wacky off-text thing from David Graeber and David Wengrow's The Dawn of Everything, which is a book.
The book is The Dawn of Everything.
The book is called The Dawn of Everything. It came out maybe a year ago. And this is a wacky quote coming from an anthropologist and an archaeologist. And I've heard there's a lot of other people reading this book and talking about it. And I haven't heard anyone like not notice this quote. So it says this, and it's slightly modified for the context. Some of these populations of early hominids throughout Africa, they're talking about early hominids throughout Africa. I think, honestly, they're talking about early Homo sapiens throughout Africa. Remained isolated from each other for tens or even hundreds of thousands of years, cut off from the nearest relatives by deserts and rainforests. Strong regional traits developed. The result probably would have struck a modern observer as something more akin to a world inhabited by hobbits, giants, and elves than anything we have direct experience of today or in the more recent past. Those elements that make up modern humans, the relatively uniform us referred to above, seem only to have come together quite late in the process. In other words, if we think humans are different from each other now, it's largely illusory. And even such differences as do exist are utterly trivial and cosmetic compared with what must have been happening in Africa during most of prehistory. That's from page 81.
So that reminds me of the Galapagos Islands and the finches, and that there's like each island has different, like uniquely different species because there's that like geological barrier separation.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
So in the early hominids in Africa, the deserts where they can't connect and interact, mingle, whatever.
Yeah.
The distinctions.
Yeah, like my point being, when an orc and a human in Middle Earth interact, it's not like a dude from like Europe and a dude from Asia. It's not a valid comparison, I think.
So you were saying that an orc and a hobbit interacting, there's much greater distance.
Yeah. Than any human to human comparison that we have.
Right.
Right.
That distance could be time, it could be space.
Yeah. Now, as we'll see later in the episode, the comparison to elves is maybe a little tighter.
Orcs and elves.
Yeah, for reasons that we'll get into. And another thing about this orcs as minority human comparison, Tolkien regularly says that they have dark skin. He's like over and over, he's always talking about that their skin is dark, right? So that's obviously, I think, how comparisons to like racial politics in the U.S. get inferred into it. And I don't play Warhammer. Mm-hmm. Do you?
I never really played. I did collect things when I was in 7th, 8th grade.
Collected what?
The little miniatures and paint them.
Oh, I didn't know that's what it was about. I thought it was an online thing.
Warhammer?
Yeah, is it not?
It's a tabletop game.
It is, okay.
The fantasy, I think, has folded, but their 40K, the futuristic version, is still going strong.
Yeah, word. So I'm not trying to tread on anyone who knows more about Warhammer than me, which is literally everyone. But I noticed at some point that they sidestep that racial comparison problem by referring to orcs and I think other types of orcish or goblinoid beings as greenskins. Do you know that term?
Yes.
Those are like the bad guys, right, in Warhammer?
Wait, they have like orcs, goblins can be like an army that you could choose and you could be them.
And they're called greenskins, right?
Yes. Sometimes.
Right. So I think it's a smart move for them in order to retain, not that it's healthy to retain this, but to retain a notion that there's an evil race and they're more explicitly outsiders. I'm just going to read a bit from the Warhammer fandom wiki. The term greenskins is a common collective description used by many civilized nations to refer to refer to the forces of the orcs, goblins, and other biologically related races, right? And again, don't know anything about Warhammer, but from what I read, they are posited as being extraterrestrial, like fungal animal hybrids. So they're like not only
really,
yeah, I think,
Ooh,
and
that seems
this spawning thing, this idea that you can look into it. The Warhammer greenskins, I think they spore like mushrooms, and I think that they came from outer space, and so that gives them like an outsider status and a extra special status that all I think really puts to rest any sort of human to human comparison. You feel me?
they're definitely othered.
Yeah, but they're othered in a way that makes them incomparable to any othered human population by dint of their totally extraterrestrial, fungally hybridized
outer
being.
space alien, different species, like not only different species, like different family of life.
It doesn't even biologically reproduce like humans.
Right, like totally incomprehensible, but at the same time evolutionarily impossible.
Only in the world of Warhammer.
In this world that they have like two eyes, a face.
You mean
nose,
this world
mouth.
here, our real world?
Yeah, or like whatever world, like how evolution works.
Sure.
There's no mushroom that has a face and legs.
not
There's
yet.
Yeah,
Just because you can't recognize it as a face. No,
But we can recognize the orcs and goblins' faces.
Yeah, they look humanoid, but
They
turns
are
out they're
humanoid.
not. Right? Yeah. Although that could just be anti-greenskin propaganda. That kind of crap has been said about human populations. Yeah. Will you tell the listeners what an orc is?
Oy. On the spot, not really. An orc.
What do they look like?
Oh, okay, so let's do stereotypical orc. They're going to be like dark, greasy, dirty, stained. They are hunched posture.
Sure.
Usually bipedal.
Yeah, but hunchy though, like they
Hunchy
knuckle dragging.
could do a little bit of like hands on the ground too, maybe, but not. I would say not.
Okay. How tall do you think?
Pointy ears.
Pointy ears. Yeah, good call.
They do not like the daylight.
Yeah.
Sunlight is abhorrent to them.
Mm-hmm.
Actively
None of them.
painful, perhaps, to them. Except for the Uruk-hai, which are a bigger, stronger breed of orc. They are not super big. They're like big. They're bigger than hobbits and smaller than humans. And in the books, goblins and orcs are somewhat interchangeable.
So let's get right at two of those things.
Whereas in Warhammer, orcs are bigger, goblins are smaller. There's a distinction between those.
Ditto in D&D. Yeah.
In Lord of the Rings, interchangeable terms.
Yes, and this is a point of contention for people that I think haven't looked too deeply into it. And I do also want to quickly make a note that a lot of my thinking about orcs for this episode starts with this book that's not one of the books from Lord of the Rings, but is a Guide to Middle-earth by Robert Foster. It's the Ballantine complete and definitive concordance for the Lord of the Rings. They got a great entry on orcs. And yeah, orcs and goblins it means the same thing. I think I have notes that make that clear at some point. Yeah, so this is just one piece of evidence from the Two Towers. It looks like it's from page 20. Goblin soldiers of great stature. That seems to refer to the Uruk-hai, who are orcs. But goblin soldiers, right? So like goblins. The other thing that the Guide to Middle-earth says that goblins is like a hobbit term.
Oh, and orcs might be more of a human term, perhaps.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I see. Soldiers. So you brought up soldiers. Another thing that I see with orcs is that they're all involved in the military. I don't see any orcs not involved in military. They're soldiers, they're warriors, they're trackers, they're hunters. They're all military in these books.
Mm-hmm.
So like the independent like orc that lives in its own place, and they're not it's not an agrarian society.
Sure.
It's not really hunter gatherer. They're not like.
Well, it maybe is hunter, right? That maybe is the overlap between like a tribal life and a military life. If there's no one to kill,
there's an overlap, but they're not exclusively hunter gatherers living their lives. They have a bent. In these books, there's this world domination bent that they have.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not ever sure if they want to dominate or if they're just like in constant like fight mode. Like they're never gonna. There's no sense that they're actually gonna dominate. They're just like constantly. I don't know. I don't know what that means. Though.
I mean,
gone unchecked.
Constantly like that as a tool of Sauron.
Right. Yeah. He has a world domination model. In terms of them being not tall, that's a big one. Given that there's so much like momentum of the Warhammer and Dungeons and Dragons and probably other models, paradigm of like big orcs and small goblins. And either some other distinctions, I think like evil chaotic maybe versus evil neutral. I'm not sure. But I think that they might be like as small as like halflings in some cases. I'm going to give a couple quotes. Fellowship of the Ring. This is during the fight in whose tomb are they in? Who's the famous old
Balin.
Yeah, that's how I've written down, but he's
Balin.
That's Balin's tomb. Yeah, okay. They're having a fight in there. And the narrator refers to a huge orc chieftain almost man high.
Yeah.
So that's the like a biggest kind of orc that'd be down there, and that dude is almost man high. Then again, book 4, Gollum sees the men of Harad, and he says, "Very cruel, wicked men they look, almost as bad as orcs and much bigger." So like these dudes, they're as bad as orcs, almost, but they're also much bigger, which I think again kind of demonstrates that orcs are small human size.
There's also another point for the size of the orcs. When Frodo is incapacitated from Shelob and she's lying there, and the orcs are like, "Oh, we'll take him back to the thing. He's not dead." It takes 4 of them to carry Frodo. Wow. 4 of them are carrying a halfling.
Yeah. So this is from that, not from that exact same scene, but when we pick back up with that in Return of the King, Sam sees an orc because there's this fight between Shagrat and the other dudes. It's complicated, so I'm not going to get into all the
Gore bag.
Yeah, those dudes are like, it's like kind of comic relief or whatever. But at one point,
comic relief, interesting.
Well, they're fighting over the coat,
a
right?
shiny thing.
But meanwhile, Frodo is being held in this
a shiny thing that has like the value of which is more than the entire Shire.
Right. Yeah.
Like the most expensive.
So anyways, here's the description. Out of the turret door, the smaller orc came flying. Behind him came Shagrat, a large orc with long arms that, as he ran crouching, reached to the ground. But one arm was hung limp and seemed to be bleeding. The other hugged a large black bundle. In the red glare, Sam, cowering behind the stair door, caught a glimpse of his evil face as it passed. It was scored as if by rending claws and smeared with blood. Slaver dripped from its protruding fangs. The mouth snarled like an animal. So there's like a kind of classic description of an orc. There's also a moment where Shagrat leaps aside orc fashion. Quote, orc fashion. It strikes me as monkeyish. Reminds me of the flying monkeys from Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yeah, okay. And they're kind of small and they're like arms in the ground, hunched over. Yep. The monkey thing feels a little uncomfortable. I'm experiencing discomfort with that.
Because it feels close to human?
Well, how that word is used.
Feels close to the human stereotype.
Yeah.
Racist stereotype of
That's
humans.
right. That's
sure,
right.
Yeah. So the thing about the discomfort that you're experiencing, it's because monkey is used to say this human being is not a human, right?
Yeah.
So ditto in this quote, the mouth snarled like an animal. Well, it's obviously an animal because hominids are animals, and even like Sam's an animal.
We're animals.
John and Clark
We're
are
mammals.
Right, yeah, exactly. So there's, like, without a doubt, there's constant othering here. Yeah, I want to get into this Guide to Middle-earth. Briefly, in terms of the sun, right, this book says all orcs prefer the dark, although most orcs, except for the Uruk-hai, were weak in the sun, and all orcs prefer the dark. They're skilled in tunneling, in making weapons, and in other practical skills. Their medicines were harsh but extremely effective. Orcs wore foul, coarse clothing and heavy shoes, and they hated all things of beauty and loved to kill and destroy. Orcs used many weapons, including bows, spears, stabbing swords, and long knives, but they seemed to have preferred scimitar-like swords. Orcs liked blood and raw flesh and ate, among other things, men, ponies, and their own kind. And there's more to say, but I wanted to just briefly mention, just get some textual support on that.
So the beauty thing, beauty is subjective. I'm going to say beauty is subjective.
Sure, yeah, I would
Probably.
agree. Yeah.
But if they hate all things that are beautiful, why are they fighting over the mithril coat? This like little shiny object.
I don't know. He doesn't offer textual evidence a lot in the guide, which is, so here's what I found. In book 3, they're said to carry broad-bladed. The Uruk-hai are curiously at the scene of Boromir's death and the abduction of Pippin and Merry.
Yep.
They find broad-bladed, not, quote, curved scimitars, broad-bladed swords, and not curved scimitars.
So like
and
straight.
That's curious to
Straight
Aragorn.
wide.
Yeah, that's curious to Aragorn. So that seems to establish that they carry curved scimitars. Again, that's probably a little on Tolkien's part, maybe a little like an anxiety about, like an Orientalist anxiety about the East. Yeah, curved scimitars. I mean,
The East, the Middle East.
In my Western imagination, curved scimitars equal Middle East.
Yeah,
Or maybe
Arabian.
or maybe Genghis Khan. Who knows? Genghis.
Genghis.
That's what people say. And then this is minor, but on page 64, the orc medicine, they give it to one of them, either Pippin or Merry.
Mary.
And it works, quote, swiftly.
Right.
So it works. And they're
Unpleasant,
Giving, yeah,
but
they're giving
works.
him shit about it. Baby doesn't like to take his medicine.
Right.
But yeah, whatever.
They didn't. They did not. They're not Mary Poppins with a spoonful of sugar helping.
No,
them.
yeah, it's the real deal. And then there's this, there's a question about orcs, female orcs. You got any
That is
thoughts
a
on it?
question.
Yeah, it's a big question. And
Sort of like female dwarves. I mean, they must exist in the world somehow, right? Unless they're like the orcs and goblins from Warhammer.
yes, yeah,
And I know I know we don't want to talk about the movies very much, but in the movies they sort of hatch fully grown orcai from Isengard.
like slime. Right?
Yeah, like a placenta.
Yeah. So
thing.
here's what Robert Foster's guide has to say about that. It says nothing is said about orcish tribal structures or female orcs. Orcs were said to be spawned. And again, I don't know exactly where the evidence of that is.
And
but
what else do we know that spawned in our world?
In our world?
When do we
don't even
humans
know.
on Earth we use the word spawn? I feel like there's a hellish demon devil association.
Right. Yeah, hellspawn.
Hellspawn. You got Spawn, the like quote comic character hero, but also villain, and he's in hell. I feel
Yeah.
like Spawn, the
Spawn of
flies and mosquitoes and whatever,
Yeah.
like the evil thing. It's just people used to think they just spawned out of nowhere. Like flies just came, they didn't hatch.
Right,
They spawned.
they're spontaneous and
Spontaneous.
right. Yeah, I don't want to get too hung up in that, but I think that rhyme and assonance and consonance thing is important because the other word at play here is spore. Like when I was looking up the greenskins on the Warhammer wiki, I was like Control F looking for spawn, and there is a book.
What's
called-
Control F?
That's how you find something on the internet.
Was that like a search thing?
Yeah, Control F, Control Find.
I didn't know that.
Pro tip.
I got Control Shift T reopens a closed tab. Like, why did I
I've
close
never
that?
heard of that one. That's nuts.
Control Shift T.
So there's a book though. There is a Warhammer book called Something Spawn, like a something spawned or the spawn of something, and that's maybe an important book in the orcish, like the canon of what it means in the Warhammer orc canon. So the word spawn has been applied, but the word spore is applied more often because they are explicitly fungal.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
And in the movie The Secret Garden, the girl opens the windows, let the sunshine in, and the boy who's like been told he's sick and ill is like, but the spores will get me.
Yeah. They'll infect you. Spores will infect you.
Right.
So I don't have anything to say about orcish women folk because apparently neither did Tolkien. And I didn't track down any of the Spawn stuff, but I mean, again, like you could be talking about actual breeding and like regular old childbirth. If you hated a group of people, you could say spawn or over there spawning
Right.
in the Misty Mountains.
A derogatory term.
But what
You
are
use
they?
it as a derogatory term.
Yeah, I think it feels unhuman and other.
Yeah.
You want to get into this origins?
What origins?
The origins of orcs. Where'd they come from? Because like elves, boom, poof. Iluvatar's like, I made elves. And with dwarves, as we'll get to in the next episode, different dude, different god was like, I made him.
I made them.
Yeah, and same with humans. Iluvatar, poof, makes them. Straight up
Okay,
creationism.
that's all you. I'm not up on that.
All right, but I think you maybe. I don't want to quiz you, but it's also maybe a quiz for the listeners.
All right, quiz the listeners.
Treebeard said something. We talked about it already once, I think. He said something about blank R2 ents as orcs R2 blank. Fill in the blanks.
That's a lot of blanks. Blanks are to ents as orcs are to blank.
Yep.
I'm going to say orcs are to elves.
Yep.
What are to Ents like orcs are to elves? Ooh. Trolls.
Yep.
Nailed it.
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah. Treebeard said it. Created as twisted imitations. There's a quote. I don't know where it's from.
Created.
That's not a quote. That's my own
Oh,
notes.
okay. That's
But yeah.
you're bringing that in.
But
So
yeah,
like not like a change, not like an evolution, but
Yeah, no, I don't know what Treebeard said. We'll have to go back and find it.
where was it?
Some
When did you say it?
corrections. He says it in Fanghorn Forest. You want to find it now?
Well, give me more.
Let's do it.
Let's find
No,
it
we'll
now.
go find
Give
it.
me some more
Stop.
context.
Stop, we'll go. Music. All right. After much textual wrangling, we found it. And we found some other stuff too. Ballantine 113, Two Towers. Maybe you have heard of trolls. They are mighty strong, but trolls are only counterfeits made by the enemy in the great darkness in mockery of Ents, as orcs were of elves. Yeah, so that's Treebeard. And while we were looking, I don't know if did you see this other? We were talking a little bit. The Treebeard and all those Ents, they think they're orcs. They think that
Merry and Pippin are little orcs.
yeah, they think they're little orcs.
So that's
Does it
again,
say-
that's
hold
again
on,
for the size.
Yeah.
If they think the halflings are little orcs, so
Do they say little orcs though, or are you just inferring that? I'm not gonna go back and look, but
it definitely says it in the films. Ass.
so okay. So another point for orcs are little, but also we're talking about orcs being. What does it say? What did I say? Created in the darkness, crafted in the darkness. Counterfeits made by the enemy in the great darkness, which seems to refer to time for me. Okay,
Crafted is time.
No, at the great darkness, I think is.
Oh, the great darkness is a period of time.
So here we go. I got this quote, and I don't know what it's from because it says 260, and I think it's probably Silmarillion. And it's just a quick one. Unclean orcs, the mockery of the children of Iluvatar. Children of Iluvatar being elves. All right, what are you looking for? The little orcs thing?
Little orcs. Little orcs. It says little orcs.
Good.
If I had seen you before I heard you, I should have just trodden on you, taking you for little orcs.
Okay. So orcs, slightly bigger than hobbits,
Boom.
smaller than dudes.
Support your argument with evidence.
We're all about it. Can I get back to the Silmarillion?
Yeah, go
This is
ahead.
the real shit right here. So, this is my writing, and then an extended quote from the Silmarillion. When the Quendi awaken and I don't know how to pronounce this, and so the Quendi are the elves, and this thing is Cuivien. It's a classic example of like high fantasy, goofy names. Cuivien. It's the lake, giant lake, where all the elves wake up. Melkor seeds them with rumors of a great hunter who will take them away. So he spreads all these malicious rumors that there's this great hunter that's going to come and take them away. And so when one of the Valar, Arome, comes to bring them to Valinor, that's the plan, I guess. That's the plan. Some run away and hide. Okay?
Okay.
So there's all these elves, and they're brand new. They've been around for like a week.
A week.
Yeah, and
They are
then
brand new.
Arome's coming by to be like, everybody, we're going to Valinor, so you can live with the gods. But Melkor, god of discord, has already told them, beware of a hunter. So some of the elves run away and hide. The Silmarillion tells this. But of those unhappy ones who were ensnared by Melkor, little is known of certainty. For who of the living has descended into the pits of Utumno, or has explored the darkness of the councils of Melkor? Yet this is held true by the wise of Erisea, that all those of the Quendi who came into the hands of Melkor, ere Utumno was broken, were put there in prison, and by slow arts of cruelty were corrupted and enslaved. And thus did Melkor breed the hideous race of the orcs in envy and mockery of the elves, of whom they were afterwards the bitterest foes. For the orcs had life and multiplied after the manner of the children of Iluvatar, and naught that had life of its own, nor the semblance of life, could ever Melkor make, since his rebellion in the Ainulindale before the beginning. So say the wise. And deep in their dark hearts, the orcs loathed the master whom they served in fear, the maker only of their misery. This, it may be, was the vilest deed of Melkor and the most hateful of Iluvatar.
Man, that's some heady. That's heady.
Yeah, he
just the
fucked
words.
them
The
up.
words is heady. Just listening to you read that and all the
biblical.
names and the who and the what. It's a heady thing to understand what actually just happened.
You're saying it's got a biblical cadence?
Yeah, I guess maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, like whatever you just read
Forget the
feels like
words.
it needs to be translated.
Sure, yeah.
Just like we need to translate Shakespeare.
all the-
Like, what's actually going on here?
Here's what's actually going on. Melkor is the god of discord.
All right, Discord
God,
guy,
we're using the word god loosely. We've talked about it before, though.
lowercase g.
Yeah, and he scares he scares some of the new elves into hiding from this other god he's like a god of, he's gonna round him up and bring him to the godland.
Mm-hmm.
And then Melkor ensnares all those hiding. He's the real hunter, right? He's the
Discord is the real hunter. Malcolm
yeah,
Discord.
he's yeah. Again, I'm a big fan of Discord, so I'm not trying to knock it, but that's in the Silmarillion, that's his move, is to undo everything that Iluvatar, who was his creator and the sort of like universal god power.
I mean, that's a pro hunter move. Like, there's this big group, so like you separate some people, like you separate a few of the people from the big group,
Yeah.
and then you get them.
Yeah, and he
This is like
yeah.
this is what hunters do in the wild. This is what animals do. They get like one water buffalo, one gazelle, one antelope, one zebra separated, and then they get that one.
Yep, and I don't know if this is really true per se, but sometimes we have a notion that that's like the weakest one or the oldest one or the
Right.
most scared. So in a way,
It's the most isolated at that time.
he's called right. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of factors. He's called out a segment of the Quendi, and he's twisted them into orcs this is over thousands of years, I guess. Maybe only 1,000. He doesn't have too much time, I guess. It's the year 0 or whatever. He's got to move fast so that he can fight wars with his orcs.
I have a thought. Like, we might cut this. Here's my thought when you're like the Quendi, whatever, and I was like, say that name again.
Quendi?
No, it was, whatever.
QVNN?
Yeah, QAnon. I'm like, is like QAnon? Is that like the early QAnon? And then the guy,
QAnon CNN?
and then like the god of Discord is like, they're gonna send someone and get you, and then like he gets them.
What are you saying? You saying he's a
I don't know. It
conspiracy
just
theorist?
Yeah, it feels like there's conspiracy theory in there, and QAnon of VN.
Well, it's in terms of conspiracy theory, it's what it is shillery, right? Like Melkor is saying there's a conspiracy against you, but he's the real conspiracy. He's working for he's the trap.
it's the double blind, triple blind
Right. So
doubt.
So then
seeds of doubt.
so that's the story. Melkor rounds them all up and turns them into orcs in his dungeons. And that's a hateful thing to the orcs and to the creator.
Into life and freedom and liberty and all of it.
And it sets up a problematic relationship between elves who will eventually return to, Middle Earth, and orcs who have been stuck there as a twisted and enslaved race. Yeah, it's a bummer, dude. The story is that orcs don't love each other, right? They don't seem to like each other very much. This has come up a couple of times, too. It seems to always be... There's a lot of infighting.
Doesn't seem to be much love. There's not a lot of brotherhood.
There's a big fight that really illustrates... There's two big fights in Return of the King that are witnessed by one or two of the hobbits. The first one is Shagrat v. Gorbag. Okay, so my notes say the my notes say the fight between Shagrat and Gorbag is over the mithril mail coat ? But you can confirm that.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely, the mithril is definitely a key part of that. Because
Okay.
I don't remember which one like grabs it and runs away with it. I feel like that's my shiny thing. All shiny things go.
Yeah,
whatever.
right. So also these dudes, Gorbag and Shagrat, are from different. They serve different regional masters. So, for example, Gorbag he's from Minas Morgul.
Okay,
They're wearing different liveries.
Right.
Liveries.
I like liveries.
Yeah. And Shagrat is repping Lugbors, which is the orcish
Yeah, so
word.
Shagrat's like, that's mine, it's going to the Kremlin. I mean, Lugbors.
Yeah, without a doubt. Shagrat is way up there with Sauron and them. Now, Minas Morgul
Oh, I
is
like
being,
that, Sauron and them.
well, I don't
I like,
maybe
that,
not.
I like the phrase and them.
Yeah, but it may be just a bunch of orcs and Sauron because
There was Jerry Seinfeld was talking to Steve Harvey about the phrase and them. It's just like,
what do you say about it?
he was like, it's just a way to, like, it's just this simple way to be like the rest of the people in a very just a quick, instant, like Shagrat et al.
Yeah, right.
Shagrat and them.
But
Like y'all kind of thing.
Who's running Minas Morgul? Is that the Morgul King? Is that what they call him?
Minas Morgul is the realm of the Witch King.
Yeah, it's the same. He's the head of the Nazgul.
Yeah, that
Right.
guy.
So
that's his realm. That's
Right.
his castle.
So like they've got different commanders, and
he's
I guess
the first lieutenant.
Shagrat's commander must be Sauron, or like a bunch. I don't know who's at the Black
I mean,
Tower
ultimately, yeah.
because
I don't know the mouth of Sauron.
yeah, whoever
Like
that
whatever-
guy is, he's a man.
Whatever lieutenants are in Mordor.
We've got another dude named Snaga. He seems to be with Shagrat. They're like insider orcs from inside Mordor. They're both injured. There's talk of eating. A couple times they're like, at least one time, one of them says, "I'll eat you," like if you come near me. Or so it's interesting. Like they're bleeding. They've been fighting. It's interesting that like as they approach death, they have like an instinctive like, like a snarling animal as it's dying in a trap or whatever.
Yeah.
But they're like maybe going to eat each other on the verge of
Maybe
death.
literally eat them.
Yeah, that's what it means.
But it might also be figurative, the way we humans in this world might say, like, oh, like you do that, you'll be eaten alive.
Yeah.
But it's a figurative sense.
Yeah, but I don't think it's figurative here. I think he means
right.
I'm
There's
gonna
enough. There's enough like doubt cast on that by Tolkien and the cannibalistic
Yeah,
qualities.
yeah.
But also, like we do weird things, like oh, your baby's so cute, I could just eat him right up. Nom, 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 nom. Ugh.
Yeah.
Feels a little weird.
We're gonna get right at the orcs cannibalism thing. Let me just drop these two quick quotes about orcs not getting along. Frodo and Sam know they're on about orcs fighting and killing each other all the time. Sam says, well, after they witness a fight between two orcs, like it's the tracker orc and some other dude.
Yeah.
And they get in a fight and they one of them kills the other
They've
one.
escaped from Cirith Ungol. They've jumped down the bank. They've landed in thorns.
Yep.
They're hiding, and then there's this tracker that comes up.
Yeah. And they fight, and one, maybe both of them.
They're looking for him.
They might both
They're almost
die.
going to be caught.
Right, but they can't get it done because they're killing each other.
Yeah, they're bickering.
Right. So Sam says, after witnessing that, well, I call that neat as neat. If this nice friendliness would spread about in Mordor, half our trouble would be over. And then Frodo says, this is the spirit of Mordor, Sam, and it has spread to every corner of it.
So this is like they've literally killed each other. Orcs have killed orcs in this scene, and it's like civil war. And that's what.
Yeah, it's been the way.
That's the friendliness.
Yeah, the nice friendliness is ironic. But you can't get much hope out of it. They hate us far more, all together and all the same. If those two had seen us, they would have dropped all their quarrel until we were dead.
That's the united enemy thing. That's 1984. You will like unite with your enemy to fight your common enemy. I mean, these two, like, they would hate the hobbits. That's the unifying that will bring them together. The orcs will get over their argument with each other to fight the hobbits.
Their common enemy.
The
Yes.
common enemy.
Yeah, and I'm going to just acknowledge this feeling that I'm having as we talk about orcs. Like, and I've said this before, like, we don't actually know, like, just because Frodo says, oh, everybody says that orcs have always hated each other. Well, everybody says all kinds of crazy shit, and it doesn't make it like a defining feature of a race. And I am very sympathetic to orcs. I think they're being maligned. I want to say they're being maligned by the narrator, but I know, like, I feel like hardline fiction readers would maybe, maybe that's kind of a deliberately deconstructionist mode of thinking. Can we take it at face value that the orcs are anything other than a fantasy projection?
I don't understand the question.
The question is, if Frodo, just because Frodo says orcs are evil,
Meaning like they're evil.
Okay.
That is the
Frodo,
nature. That
Frodo
their-
is unreliable as a
nature.
character.
Interesting.
But it is our third person omniscient narrator unreliable. This is, I mean, I know it's all headed toward the post-colonial deconstruction episode, but sometimes I'm like, man, I don't know. I don't buy it. I don't buy that they don't love each other. I don't buy that they don't have families. I don't buy that they'll always kill each other.
Well, yeah. So there's a part in there's a part that like has like companionship of orcs where they're picking up Frodo from like he's wrapped in Shelob's web, and they're gonna as there's people talking. Maybe I should find this, but the orcs are talking like, maybe one day we'll just like take like some of the lads and we'll go and get our own place like out in the wilderness.
Before.
Should I try and find it?
No. Well, maybe in a minute. But is your point with the quote that like
he uses the term lads, like
right,
like
yeah.
bros, like buddies, like
Yeah.
friends,
yeah, and also
like companions, like social creatures
Yep.
that need to live together,
and also this notion
maybe
that,
even harmoniously.
and also this notion that some of them maybe want to break away from a warlike
Yes.
imperial servant
They want to
mode.
They want to retire from the military and go live their lives in wherever.
Yeah, and I don't think we have to assume that these are orcs that have evolved newly. It's probably that orcs have the potential for that, and there's parameters that have led to the situation. I'm going to stop it for a second. You're going to look for that quote?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so I found this section where they're talking about like slipping off. So I'm gonna read a section. This is in the Two Towers, the choices of Master Samwise towards the end of the book. These are like the last few pages. My copy starts page 392. This is Gorbag talking. The messages go through quicker than anything could fly as a rule, but I don't inquire how it's done. Safest not to. Grr, those Nazgul give me the creeps, and they skin the body off of you soon as look at you, and leave you all cold in the dark on the other side. But he likes 'em. They're his favorites nowadays, so it's no use grumbling. I tell you, it's no game serving down in the city. You should try being up here with Shelob for company, said Shagrat. I'd like to try somewhere where there's none of 'em. But the war's on now, and when that's over, things may be easier. It's going well, they say. They would, grunted Gorbag. We'll see. But anyway, if it does go well, there should be a lot more room. What do you say? If we get the chance, you and me will slip off and set up somewhere on our own with just a few trusty lads. Somewhere where there's good loot, nice and handy, and no big bosses. Ah, said Shagrat, like old times.
Like old times.
Like old times, like, wow, man, like good war buddies, like,
That confuses me because again, it's a complicated thing to follow, but my notes have Shagrat as Lugbors and Gorbag as Minas Morgul. You think I'm wrong?
I don't know.
Or do you think that they came imagine if they came down from like the Misty Mountains or Mirkwood, like as like new recruits or whatever, and then they were like assigned. One was assigned to the Black Tower, and one was assigned to Minas Morgul, and they haven't seen each other for a minute.
maybe.
Also-
Or is this also like, if they're the ones that are fighting, are they the ones that are fighting and killing each other for the Mithril cult?
I think I don't know.
Well, we should know, because if they are, then that's like a friendship that falls out. And then that's followed by Frodo's comment of like, that's the orcs, that is the orcs, how they operate.
I think it is a fight between. My note says the fight between Shagrat and Gorbag is over the mithril mail coat? ? You want to look?
I mean, I think we need to look this up.
It's hard to tell though, because it's so, to me, and again, maybe this is just me. They have such a like anonymous bumbling, and also, yeah, your reading was interesting too. You've got Shagrat with the snarly upper, like in the treble.
I wanted to just differentiate, and those are two voices.
Right, but Gorbag, I always have Gorbag up high and Shagrat down low.
Should I read it again different?
No, again. So what we're demonstrating here, though, is how they are, to me as a reader, and I don't think that this is an unusual reaction to orcs. They're kind of anonymous.
Yeah, a little, because they're not the protagonists. They're the enemy, or is it Snaga?
Snaga is
fighting.
another dude, and my note says that Snaga is with Shagrat. But I don't know if that means that they...
Oh, here you go. Here's
No,
Gotcha.
Shagrat, no. Shagrat does kill Gorbag.
Yeah.
Shagrat kills Gorbag.
Yeah, so these are the two that were just like
They were
like
Latin-
old times. Like, what do you say? You and me will slip off and like set up our own place.
That's crazy. Who was saying that? Shagrat or Gorbag?
Gorbag is inviting Shagrat to slip off and set up their own place with a few trusty lads. And Shagrat's like, like old times.
Like old times. That's wild. All right, so
And then they kill. Then one
Yeah.
ends up killing the other in
This-
the fighting.
this leads nicely to some stuff that I have categorized under orcs as the essential other, especially cannibalistic. Shagrat says to Snaga, "You must go, or I'll eat you." You must go, or I'll eat you. Like, I'm gonna eat you if you don't get out of here. And then when Shagrat kills Gorbag, my notes I say again with a question mark, because did he already get him once, or did Shagrat is maybe injured during the scene? Go back to go back to the book and find it. When Shagrat kills Gorbag, he howls a quote gurgling yell of triumph, and then he licks the blood off the knife.
Yeah. Oh, that's on page 193 of my page 193.
224 for the Valentine.
Return of the King, Tower of Cirith Ungol.
Yep. There's a couple other things about orcs eating each other. The Ugluk and all them back in book 3, they say they're talking about how they eat man flesh. The Orcai that Sauron gives them man flesh. And then this is a. Just
And they kill. This is in the film. I'm not sure if it's the movie. They kill an orc in the film, like decapitate a dude who's gonna kill, like attack the hobbits, and it's like, looks like meat's back on the menu, boys. Like,
Yeah.
oh shit! Like intestines are flying through the screen. You're like, that is gruesome.
yuck.
Do you want this quote from like
Is it about-
Gorbag Shagrat killing each other?
Well, yeah, let's do it.
I
I can't get enough of these dudes.
So this is Return of the King, Tower of Cirith Ungol, page 192, 193. Suddenly, as Shagrat stooped over the battlement, his back to the rooftop, Sam to his amazement saw that one of the sprawling bodies was moving. It was crawling. It put out a claw and clutched the bundle. It staggered up. In its other hand, it held a broad-headed spear with a short, broken haft. It was poised for a stabbing thrust, but at the very moment a hiss escaped its teeth, kss, a gasp of pain or hate. Quick as a snake, Shagrat slipped aside, twisted round, and drove his knife into his enemy's throat. "Got you, Gorbag!" he cried. "Not quite dead, eh? Well, I'll finish my job now." He sprang onto the fallen body and stamped and trampled it in his fury, stooping now and again to stab and slash it with his knife. Satisfied at last, he threw back his head and let out a horrible, gurgling yell of triumph. Rawr! Then he licked his knife and put it between his teeth, and catching up the bundle, he came loping towards the near door of the stairs.
I like.
I'm increasing my dramatic reading game.
I know. It's
Well, I also
good.
have like the slight like
Oh, yeah,
post-nasal
yeah,
drip,
yeah.
which like is lending itself
in good-
brilliantly
good
to
orc mode.
orc. I've got an orc voice going on.
Word. Okay.
'Cause
One
it's
more.
February and winter and sickness.
I want to get at one more thing about orcs as the essential other, especially cannibalistic. Aragorn. This is Aragorn to Éomer. This tense moment between the tenseness between Aragorn and Éomer, where Aragorn has to be like, "Bro, I'm the king. Like, I'm gonna cross through here."
When they're running across the plains and the
Yeah,
Rohirrim
Éomer and them roll up.
have
Yeah.
encircled them with spears pointed,
Yeah, and Aragorn has to buck him down.
and like they're about to get stabbed, and Gimli and Legolas are ready to fight, and Gimli's like, "Whoa, this is
Yeah.
tense."
So Aragorn says to Éomer, "There are few among mortal men who know more of orcs, and I do not hunt them in this fashion out of choice." Now, this passage about orc hunting demonstrates the notion of orcs as huntable, non-human invaders to both Aragorn, Northern Ranger type, and Éomer, Rohirrim, Cowboy Ranger.
Ooh,
In the
yeah,
Texas,
cowboys
in the Texas
West.
Yep, in the Texas border tradition. So this hasn't come up yet, but now is as good a time as any to mention it. Sources seem to indicate the Silmarillion quote I read, but also Robert Foster's Guide to Middle Earth. The orcs don't die naturally.
They don't,
No.
which would be similar to elves who have
Yeah.
they're immortal unless they die in battle.
Right. Given their ancestry, that's the deal.
So that's the
So
tie.
like this orc situation is that they won't die naturally.
Whoa.
In a man town like Rohan, right? That's going to be men are going to die out because orcs will reproduce however they do that, and they won't die. And the men will
Can they
die.
starve?
Maybe. Yeah, who knows?
Can elves starve?
I never thought about it.
I've never thought about it either. But like, do they? Huh. I would assume that yeah, they would have to because they eat. They eat. They drink wine.
Just for fun, you think? That's what Gandalf does.
That's what Gandalf does. He
think
doesn't
he-
eat it for nourishment and energy.
No, I don't know. I'm just playing. All this like other stuff is another angle. There is this fantasy or science fiction, or maybe any kind of like combat fiction paradigm of like the mindless, bumbling, volitionless minion, other characters. You know what I mean? I have
Minions good because I think about the Pixar Minions, the little orange, yellow creatures with the blue overalls, and they're kind of bumbling and silly and
right. They're called the minions for a reason. And
Yeah.
they're bumbling and silly for a reason. But you don't have to wipe them out. But you can, right? Like, aren't there? I don't watch those movies as a rule, but aren't there like situations or jokes, slapstick moments where one or two of them basically like kick the bucket? Like if you wipe out 3 out of a dozen minions, we'll just spawn some more.
I don't know that any of them actually die because if it's made for children.
I know. You know what I'm saying though?
Yeah, like a couple of these 3 got squashed by an anvil. Yep, they're gone. We'll never see
Right.
them
Yeah,
again.
exactly.
But, like more will just pop out of the ether.
Right. So bad guy versions of that, they fight each other, they make mistakes. Right. That's actually the fact that the minions of popular contemporary imagination,
The
what is
yellow
it? We
ones.
should call them what they are. They're Pixar creations.
Pixar
right?
minions.
Right. Pixar minions. The only difference is that they're not evil, right? The evil ones fight each other. Even the minions fight each other, right? The Pixar minions make mistakes.
Yeah, in like goofy slapstick way.
Mhm. It's a slapstick. They're always in defeat mode. They're so
Are they?
easy.
Defeat mode.
They're always they're easy to defeat by the protagonists.
Oh yeah, you could just knock a bunch of them about.
Yeah,
and they-
right,
they-
right. They're so easy to kill, and so rarely do they kill a hero.
Orcs or Pixar minions.
Any sort of we're talking about.
All of them.
I want to talk about the archetype of the essential
archetype.
mindless, bumbling, volitionless minion.
Right. See also like the Foot Clan.
Yeah, I'm glad
From
you said
Ninja
that.
Turtles.
Did you see me turn aside to write something down a minute ago?
No.
Anyways, Clark and listeners, I turned aside to write something down. What I was writing down was Foot Clan because I have a list of I have a list of minions, and that's one that I thought of last night, and I haven't had a chance to add it to the notes. And you're thinking of the Foot Clan from the movie or not? Because I am.
The movie, the TV cartoon.
Yeah, right. I never really watched that.
Yeah.
But the first
Foot.
movie,
From
1990.
That's a great film. That's a formative film.
I'll probably
in my life.
rewatch it.
Love
soon,
it
because I've been
Love
thinking
it.
about it a lot.
When we played Ninja Turtles in childhood, my brother was always Leonardo and Donatello. I was always Raphael and Michelangelo.
Word. And to get back at the Foot Clan, those boys go to the clubhouse in the movie, the first Teenage Mutant Ninja
Right.
Turtles movie. They go there and they're boys, and then at some point they have to put on that uniform,
Yep.
and the uniform makes them look like bugs, and they turn
Yeah,
into
they have
like
big mesh
Right.
eyeballs, kind of like the mesh of a microphone. Maybe that's what they used in the costumes.
yeah,
It's like the same size. Just put it on a like pantyhose type mask or something.
yep, and it makes
Headband.
you look like a faceless, nameless bad guy in a
like
movie,
fly eyes.
so that the protagonist can kill you in like a bunch of you at the same
Right.
time.
And we don't care because you don't have a face.
Who else you got?
One point they pulled a mask up over the guy and they're like, "Oh, that's a human." Sort
Oh,
of
yeah?
like the soldier, the Easterlings or the
Never
people from
seen it.
Farharad. This is the scene in Lord of the Rings where
Oh, yeah,
the arrow gets shot and the guy falls. And like, I wonder, like, if he is evil? This guy with the face now.
Yeah, but
he had a
didn't we-
mask on.
Didn't we say that that Sam doesn't see his face? We'd have to go back. It's an
What
episode-
we already talked about
episode
it.
4
Review
stuff.
like if you want to know, listen to the episode again. Tell your friends.
Tell your friends. Okay, I'm gonna say another one, and you should think about another one. This one's obvious. Stormtroopers,
Stormtroopers for
which
sure.
is they're like. I mean, I think
They started as clones.
that's what I was gonna ask because I don't truck with episodes 1, 2, and 3. But that's my understanding is that they're established to have been clones.
Right.
Right. Doesn't make them not human or whatever, but they're clones.
They were clones and then they became not clones.
Clone, spore, spawn. Little semantic cluster right there, right?
What are the drones, clones and drones?
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking of like
Drones
Star,
like ants, though. Drones.
video game StarCraft, and they're drones of the what's that species? What's that? The Zerg.
I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about?
StarCraft, the video game.
Not Star Fox. I thought
StarCraft.
Don't know it.
The Zerg. The Zerg, the boars, the swarm, the spawn, the drones, the clones.
These are all separate things, or they're all related to Star?
Oh, I'm just playing like word sounds.
Yeah, that one counts. Yeah, that's one of them. Trollocs from Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time. You ever read or hear about that series, fantasy series?
Morlocks from H.G. Wells.
No,
Trollocs,
I don't know.
Morlocks. Now I'm just in like a free association mode. Thanks.
No, it's good. That's what I want. This is the ant stuff. Orcs are described as working, quote, like ants, making fire pits outside Minas Tirith. This is a quote. The orcs screamed, waved spear and sword, and shooting a cloud of arrows at any that stood revealed upon the battlements. And the men of the mark, amazed, looked out, as it seemed to them, upon a great field of dark corn, tossed by a tempest of war, and every ear glinted with barbed light. Big C. That's from Helm's Deep. So many dead, they didn't know what to do with them. From Helm's Deep.
So many dead orcs.
Yeah.
So this is like this is getting to the idea of like the ants like a swarm. This is getting into the like a hive mind, and it's also we're coming back to like the idea of a siege. So siege warfare.
Right. We'll just throw as many orcs at this thing as possible and
Right.
then climb over the dead bodies.
So here's the thing. This morning over breakfast, I was talking with a friend who this person either has dyed blue hair and a sleeve of tattoos or is a 65-year-old white Republican man. That's just some levity. So we were talking, and the idea was that only orcs, this is not my idea, only orcs would march and then immediately attack Helm's Deep. That it's a hive mind, it's not individuals, it's you march, it's like a fallacy in history that sieges would happen that way. Like sieges were this long thing with negotiations, you'd set up a whole camp,
Right.
You'd like create weapons, you'd have like, we're here, and you'd maybe negotiate, and then you would attack in a like digging trenches and all of that. And that did not happen at Helm's Deep. They were just showed up and went immediately into it. We crossed the causeway, and then like the siege of Helm's Deep had begun. This is like page 177, 147, 148 of Two Towers in my copy. But in Minas Tirith, it's more siege-like. And like in that one, they've planned it. It says that they've planned this for a long time. They have siege towers. They have a battering ram. They set up fires. They have catapults.
Still
It's
happens
much
mad
more.
fast, though.
It happens very fast. Probably too fast for like human history and like the real world. But it is more. It's a little slower than Helm's Deep. It's more prolonged. It's more planned.
Yeah.
Helm's Deep, they show up with ladders and bombs, like gunpowder.
Gunpowder?
Whatever the dude they stack in the little drainage ditch and blow up the wall, the deeping wall.
I don't remember the scene.
So there's a keep over to the right, and then there's this big wall that prevents like for field, and that's where Aragorn was stationed with his archers, I think. And there's a little drain, like 3x3 or something, and they stack gunpowder bombs, some explosive thing that you light with fire, and so they stack those in this little drain under the wall, and then it explodes. The whole wall collapses.
Clark, you know Helm's Deep the way dudes know Civil War.
Cool.
You're like way.
This is why this is why I'm on this podcast. Maybe.
Yeah, we could do a whole episode just on the tactics of Helm's Deep. Helm's
Military
Deep battle,
tactics.
yeah.
Anyway, they blow up the wall and then they can get in, and then the king Theoden's like, retreat back to the keep. The orcs are in.
Word.
So they Helm's Deep, ladders and gunpowder. Minas Tirith, they had catapults, siege towers, battering rams, trolls, winged creatures, much more prolonged and planned. Mm-hmm. Still very quick. But then again, maybe they planned it from the other side of the river, and then they had everything in place. They crossed the river at Osgiliath, marched a little bit, and they're there. It's closer than Helm's Deep to Isengard.
Helm's Deep is an orc massacre, right? After, I'm going to give you a bunch of quotes. After Helm's Deep, the riders of the Mark and the men of the East Dales were, quote, laid under, quote, 2 mounds, whereas, quote, the orcs were piled in great heaps away from the mounds of men, not far from the eaves of the forest. And there wasn't enough wood to fire to burn the pile of dead. So Gandalf says to, quote, let the orcs lie. And then the forest, presumably Fanghorn, seems to have swallowed or absorbed them by the next morning. That's what I took out of that.
Yep.
And that becomes the Death Down. It's page 201. I assume of the 2 towers, right? Must be.
Yeah, 2 towers.
That's wild.
Why is that wild? Say more.
Well, the differentiation between the orcish dead, there's no orcs left to do anything, and it's the day, so that orcs would be hiding.
Mm-hmm. Well, no orcs survived because they
Sure, that's
whoever was
what I'm saying.
chased in the forest destroyed.
It's just a lot of dead bodies, dead bodies, and treated as like a pile of refuse. Which, again, I'm not too in love with the body in terms of like a dead body being sanctified or whatever, but it's conspicuous, the differentiation of the men's bodies from the orcs' bodies, and the burying of the men versus the burning of the orcs.
Okay, but that's also like us and them. We're gonna treat our people with dignity, respect, sanctify them, whatever. But the enemy, like, forget them. We don't just burn them, get rid of them. But we don't have enough to do that. Also, that's a lot of work, and we got other stuff to do. So just leave them alone.
Right? Yeah.
We don't have time for that. We'll take care of ours, but they were trying to kill us. Forget them.
Yeah, it's just grim. That's my only point, is that it's
Of
grim.
course, it's grim.
Yeah,
very grim. So I want to do different types of orcs and then the politics. See if that plays into it. We talked about Uruk-hai with broad blades versus the curved scimitars of the shorter ones. Uruk-hai are bigger. They can handle the sun better. They move in daylight. They have good medicine. They run very fast.
Yeah.
Make great time.
And they're presumably spawned again.
Right.
Which means no dimorphic sexual reproduction. Sea Orcs Guide to Middle-earth.
There's the tracker orc with the larger nostrils, presumably for like smelling and using those senses. Like
I got the quote.
Like a bloodhound.
Yeah. One was clad in ragged brown and was armed with a bow of horn. It was of a small breed, black-skinned, with wide and snuffling nostrils, evidently a tracker of some kind. The other was a big fighting orc, like those of Shagrat's company, bearing the token of the eye. He also had a bow at his back and carried a short, broad-headed spear. As usual, they were quarreling, and being of different breeds, they used the common speech after their fashion. We've already been at that scene.
This is
before,
like the different types of specialities of video games, role-playing games, where a warrior might be like, they're called a tank, and other ones might be like healers or whatever. This one's a tracker, that speciality, the warrior being the tank. This is when they're trying to find Frodo and Sam, who have escaped from Cirith Ungol.
Yeah. Uruk-hai, not afraid of the dawn, but weirdly afraid of Gandalf. They seem to be afraid of
Who isn't?
I know, yeah. It's interesting.
Denethor?
They respond to him, but not to natural light. They dislike it, but they're not, they can stay up or whatever. There's this really specific thing said. Northern orcs maybe see better in the dark. It's Ugluk probably who says that in the Two Towers. He says they have eyes like gimlets. Quote, gimlets. Cooked. Quote.
Cooked gimlets?
No. New quote. Quote, cooked in the daylight, unlike the Isengarders. He's like, you'll be cooked. You know,
Kind
once
of,
the daylight
yeah.
comes, you'll be cooked. Like a vampire.
Yes, thank you. I was gonna bring that in. They're vampiric with the sunlight, where it's like uncomfortable, like kind of burn. Yeah,
Yeah.
the hissing sounds.
And then this is just interesting that the Uruk-hai, you and I think both regard them as being kind of a Saruman project.
Yeah,
The Guide to Middle Earth, the take is that they're first bred by Sauron.
could be. I
Which is
mean,
interesting.
I mean, in the film, they are a Sauron project,
Right. Yeah.
and it's portrayed that way.
And Ugluk is Uruk-hai, and he talks a lot about. He's really pro Isengard.
Okay,
That's the next point and the final point, as far as I'm sure.
Politics.
Yeah, is like who are the orcs serving? So at the beginning, they're serving Melkor, aka Morgoth. He's the Dark Lord number 1, right?
Malkor. Who's the god of discord?
Melkor.
Right, same guy. Morgoth.
Yeah.
They're all the same. I
Quen-
see.
I think
same
Melkor-
entity, same being.
Yeah, I think Morgoth is means hates all of us in Quendi or whatever.
So Morgoth was the one when the elves were first formed. They were like, they're coming to get you, and he took some.
That's what the orcs are. Yeah.
Morgoth took
Yep.
them.
They're the Foot Clan of Morgoth.
Morgoth is Shredder,
Yeah, because he's
see.
like a god man. So I guess
God Shredder,
Yep.
Shredder the god.
Yeah, and then they're serving Sauron and they're serving Saruman, and they're doing that for like what do we know about why they're doing that? Why don't they just hang up by themselves?
Hang on, what?
All right, forget the way I worded the question.
Orcish politics.
Yeah, I want to talk about orcish politics, and I want to harken back to something we were talking about in the evil episode, which was the darkness in Mordor / orcs in darkness ecosystem situation.
Okay.
So it's not
Literal darkness.
yeah, like the reason that
Absence of light.
so the reason that Sauron has a bunch of orcish servants is because they showed up, because it's always dark there. And so Mordor draws orcs. And so that's how they get caught up in working for Sauron. It's not so much a political alliance as it is like a ecological coincidence.
That it has that's the niche where they thrive. They can survive.
Yeah, he exploits that.
Right.
Sauron exploits that.
Sort of like lentils grow in this particular type of soil, and if it has too much of whatever, they don't thrive, they don't produce.
Yeah, so
The soil conditions, quote unquote, soil conditions are right for orcs to thrive. Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
was that always the case in that area? Do you think, from the books and from your history of Middle Earth?
I don't know when Mordor turned dark. And I don't know if that's a result.
I mean, there is Mount Doom, which is an active volcano.
Sure, yeah.
So it's spouting ash and smoke and fumes
Yep.
and
But they're also making all kinds of weaponry.
Oh,
They got all
yeah,
kinds
the
of
industry,
smithy stuff going on.
pollution.
So orcs have also, other than Mordor, they've also plundered Moria. This is it looks like a quote. Orcs have plundered Moria, given Mithril in tribute to Sauron.
Yep.
Fellowship of the Ring, 413, Valentine's.
Might also be called more goblins in Moria. The goblins might be more like the Misty Mountains kind of orcs.
I think it's a Shire term.
Oh, okay.
That's why, though. It's
Yeah,
closer
yeah.
to Misty Mountains.
Closer to the Shire. That's where
Yeah.
they're like, oh, goblins.
Goblin Town.
Especially-
So, yeah, in The Hobbit, that's,
Down to Goblin Town
Exactly.
we go,
Yeah.
my lad.
those are the goblins saying it.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways, it's interesting that they plunder Moria and then they give tribute to Sauron. So they do. It's not like, this is kind of a counterpoint to my previous point about ecology. There's also a conscious political move to align with Sauron. Mm-hmm. They pay him.
Yep.
So whatever. In the Two Towers, we learn more about the Uruk-hai. There's actually a chapter named the Uruk-hai.
Yeah.
And what do we learn in this chapter? We learn that there are different charges.
What do you mean charges?
Charges like emblems that they wear,
Okay.
and I combined some of this with
Like
early
ranks,
No, like livery
livery.
shows what team they belong to. I combined some of this material with early Return of the King chapters. Want to play the quiz?
Yeah, all right.
All right. What's the We've done this once, maybe all the way through. What's the symbol for Isengard?
Isengard is the white hand.
Yep. And Mordor?
Mordor is the red eye.
Right. So previously we encountered an orc that had the red eye on him. He's Lugbor's specifically, because there's another Mordor charge, and that's the symbol of Minas Morgul. You know what the symbol is?
For Minas Morgul? Mm-hmm. Like the livery symbol?
Yeah.
Oy, that's...
You can do it.
Minas Morgul. Yikes. I mean, the Witch King is the guy. That's his realm. That's his castle. Oh, man. There's an actual symbol?
There is.
So we got the white hand, the red eye, and then there's going to be like the green goblin.
You can get it. Think about what Minas Morgul is.
It's the moon. It's the Tower of the Moon.
Mm-hmm. So, the charge is?
All black, the new moon.
What color moon?
The black moon.
No.
Because there is no moon. It's just a black...
Oh, no, it's the white moon.
The white moon? Mm-hmm. For Minas Morgul.
Yeah.
Not Minas Ithil.
Those are the same place, yes or no?
It's the same location, but it's like different. It's under new management. Ithil and
Right.
Morgul. Morgul is new management from Ithil.
Yeah, someone wears a white... I don't have the page number, unfortunately. Someone wears a white moon.
An orc.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Reppin' Minas Morgul.
I think I must have missed that. Or didn't catch it.
We can find it.
Interesting.
Do you want to find it?
Is it important to your political scheme?
No, it's not. I just think it's a fun detail. I like it when teams of bad
We'll
guys
let the listeners and the readers find that as an Easter egg.
Yeah. I like when the minions who are mindless are divided into like teams by color.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As a reader or a viewer. I only have one more quote left on this page that we haven't talked about yet, and it's an evil voice from the Two Towers, probably in the Uruk-hai chapter. An evil voice, maybe Grishnak. That's my guess. And the quote is Saruman the Master or the Great Eye? Capital G, capital E, capital S for Saruman. Because they're fighting over which way to go, I think, with Merry and Pippin, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Whether to go all the way back to Mordor or whether to go
Right,
to
because
Isengard.
they're two different liveries that meet up, or they're
Yes.
two different liveries that have control.
Yep.
So they fight amongst themselves. Leave some
Ugluk.
dead orcs.
Ugluk comes from Isengard, and on page 61 he says, I command. I am Ugluk, I command.
I am Ugluk. I command.
Yeah. Grishnak's from Lugbor's. Fun word to say. Is Saruman the Master or the Great Eye? I don't know if that's the place to end on orcs, but it's a place to end on orcs.
I feel like we need a closing thought. Wrap it up.
What that quote does show is like this notion that like there's no notion of orcish self-determination in these books, with one exception, the quote that you shared.
When they're going off to what do you say? We'll get our own place.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's all like subservient. It's all military. There's not, and this is what I was talking over breakfast with my friend, that there's like the individuality is not there. That's the swarm, the hive mind.
Yeah, the minion situation.
Right. They're not individualistic.
They're not rendered that way.
Correct.
Right. And this is what I failed to get at earlier, and I doubt I'll get at it now. But we have to get toward, as we approach episode 7, is this like instability of the third person omniscient narrator. Like just, it's one thing when Frodo or Sam says, oh, we've heard that orcs are this or that. But when we get the narrator telling it to us like it's a fact of the created universe, that comes with real sort of like limitations.
So I feel like what you're saying is the person that, like, as you read it, there's a narrative voice narrating the story, like in the third person. So there's the voice that we read through, and there is, so we accept that if we read it and accept it as truth, then that's how it is. That is how it is written. But there is, what your contention is there is bias, like a point to that narrator. We cannot ignore that there's somewhat of a filter that we're reading through.
And it's interesting that we would easily extend that notion to a historical religious text, right? Like take the Torah or the Bible, which at times it seems to be written in like a sort of omniscient third. My understanding is that 100 years ago, more people took it literal than today.
Yep. Seems accurate. My understanding as well.
Right. So it's interesting, though, that with Tolkien's universe and his history, it's maybe ironically harder for me or most readers to get some sort of remove and say, oh, it's subjective. Like maybe what's being said about orcs objectively is actually subjective.
So we are reading these books more like the Bible was read 100 years ago.
We're reading them
as
literally,
fact.
Yeah.
Which
when we,
the truth like makes that makes sense because it is a story. It is also fiction in a realm that does not exist.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to hate on the experience of fully merging with it. And I think that's to fully merge with it is to sort of merge with the third person omniscient narrator.
Right. And like there's also a suspension of disbelief where you have to be like, all right, I'm not going to disbelieve. I will be in it.
But think of how that's like the orc relationship with Sauron and the hive mind.
Think of how like what is.
Our own submission to the authorial truth.
Our submission to the narrator
to the vision,
as truth.
Yeah, the narrator's vision is hive-mindy and minion-like.
Oh, so we become minions to the narrator.
We become the orcs.
As orcs are minions to Sauron.
Yeah.
Whoa. That's a nice comparison.
Should we end?
That's a nice, interesting comparison.
Should we end on it?
I think we should end on that one.
And
we are to the narrator of the books as orcs are to Sauron.